Oh man, what a crazy week it was in fantasy football, guys. This was a crazy, crazy week in fantasy football. Obviously, week one is always a very, very tough time for us. And it's always the toughest week in fantasy football, is knowing that you've got so many moving pieces, so many new faces and new places, man. It's always the toughest week in fantasy football is week one. So we need to go over what I got right and what I got wrong in fantasy football for week one. There's plenty of both, guys. And the biggest thing that I always do on this channel is make sure that we are providing you guys with a lot of transparency. And there is the only way to move forward in this world with fantasy football is through honesty. We have to be completely honest about what we got right and what we got wrong in this particular week. So we're going to go ahead and just get right into what I got right and what I got wrong. The reason it's a live stream is so you guys can chime in and see if you guys have any other thoughts, any other concerns that I had in week one fantasy football. So we're going to start out with the first thing. What I got right is that Tony Pollard was a great play. And everybody knows that Tony Pollard's a great play. That's not the reason that he's on this list right now of things that I got right. The reason that he's on the list is because moving forward, like a lot of people had concerns with Tony Pollard in fantasy football for this year, season long, because of the situation with the veteran running backs. And I was among that group. But the moment we got towards the end of the season and Dalvin Cook signed with the New York Jets and then Zeke signed with the New England Patriots, I knew that this situation with Tony Pollard was going to be fantastic. And it showed exactly that last night. I mean, against the New York Giants, he was just unbelievable. And the whole team was really, but I loved what we saw from Tony Pollard. And I think it's going to be very sustainable season long for a guy like Tony Pollard all season to be like this. I mean, Tony Pollard, feel very comfortable having him as like a top 5 to 10 option every single week. I don't care what the matchup is. Tony Pollard is going to be great. So let's go ahead and address maybe the elephant in the room to a lot of you who are watching this right now. What I got wrong is that, listen, Calvin Ridley was great. Calvin Ridley looked tremendous. And this is me saying that, listen, Calvin Ridley, like my problem with him entirely all offseason was that this guy hadn't played a full season since 2020. And the reality with guys who have not played in a very long time is that their bodies are typically not in playing shape. And either they're not good on the field, see Breece Hall, not Breece Hall, I'm sorry, see Le'Veon Bell, and see Deshaun Watson last year. Or they're just not in playing shape and they get injured like a Michael Thomas did. So what Calvin Ridley did in week one was tremendous. And I have to take my L on this one because I did not think that he was going to come out swinging like that right out of the gate. He was the clear wide receiver one in this offense. And you'll see that reflected on tomorrow's wide receivers video. We're going over the top 30 wide receivers for week two fantasy football. So make sure to stay tuned for that video tomorrow. And you'll see Calvin Ridley just how willing I am to accept that I was so wrong on this. Because like I said earlier, the only way that we move forward, and it's a big foundational piece of this channel right here, we need to be honest right here. That's the big thing that I try to do to separate myself from other fantasy football YouTubers out there is we call out what we did wrong. And not everything is all sunshine and roses. I am not perfect. I do not get it right every time. Calvin Ridley is the perfect example. I was adamantly against guys like Calvin Ridley, and I was very, very wrong. So I'm still not sure how he holds up season long. I still do think there's a very decent potential that he gets injured. I'm not rooting for it. Obviously, no one wants to root for it. Like, I want to see this guy be really good in fantasy. I really, really do. He's a fun player to watch. He's super exciting. He's a very top player in this league. But, man, he looked great yesterday, and I hope that he continues to keep that up again because it's fun to watch that guy. So another thing that I got right here, and this is a really important thing on a lot of fronts right here. So, you know, I go through and I rank the top 12 defenses in fantasy football every single week. And these videos like that I do about defense, like they're not like, you know, they're not super highly viewed videos or anything like that. I don't really do those videos for the views. The reason that I do these videos is because it's important to note for fantasy football not only from a fantasy perspective of like when you're in a redraft league or in your dynasty league and you've got a defense to play and you need to know who the top guy is, but it's also important to know what defenses players are facing on offense because certain defenses, as we saw with the Cowboys on Sunday night, no Giants player could get anything going because the Dallas defense is for real, for sure. So 4 out of the top 5 defenses on my top 5 rankings, they all hit. They were all great fantasy defense options. And again, this is why I do rankings and defense every single week. Because if you had the Dallas Cowboys defense, I know personally, firsthand, that I lost one of my matchups this week because of the Dallas Cowboys defense. They had a 30-plus point game in fantasy football. That's how important the defense is in fantasy football. And I had the Washington Commanders defense in that league, and they were not a bad defensive play that week. This shows the importance of fantasy football defenses right here because defense in fantasy football simply cannot be understated. And that's why we do defense rankings every single week. And I'm one of the only fantasy football YouTubers out there that I know of that does that, man. So I will continue to do that for you guys because I know the importance of defense. And just from a football perspective, all things aside, I think I'm not going to name any names, but I do think there's a lot of fantasy football YouTubers out there who don't truly love the game of football. And they don't sit down and watch at all hours all the time. I love this game. Take away fantasy football. I am a football fan. Obviously, I love fantasy football, and that adds a whole new layer to the game for me. And that's what I want to do is be a fantasy football YouTuber when I can build a company around that. But take away that, and I am a pure football fan, which gives me the eye of watching defenses in fantasy football from a fantasy football lens. So defense rankings, continue to expect those on my channel because I understand the importance and the value that they have on every single week in fantasy football. We'll pause for a second. Angela, what's going on? Hi there. I'm new to fantasy football, and I just found your channel yesterday. Well, thank you for tuning in tonight. I appreciate you tuning in this evening. If you guys are joining, I am doing what I got right and what I got wrong in week 1 fantasy football. Basically a lessons learned type of video right here. So if you have any concerns, if you want to talk about fantasy football, put it in the chat below. That's why I made it a live stream right here. Make sure you like the video if you get value from it, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Big Luscious, I'm paranoid about Rachaad White. I know it's only week 1, but is he still worth holding on to, or should I try to look to upgrade him and a wide receiver like Christian Kirk for a better running back? So what I will say about this is that I've never been a big fan of Rachaad White. I actively said not to draft Rachaad White in the offseason, and week 1 is a great example why. Like, the guy is just simply not efficient. And he doesn't, like, it's not all his fault. Like, he doesn't have the offensive line to help him either. So that's the biggest problem with a guy like Rachaad White, is that his offensive line is just simply not a good offensive line. So that's what we need to remember moving forward. As far as dropping him to your waiver wires, unless you're in a very, very shallow league, I would not do this. Rachaad White is still going to handle volume in this backfield, and that is valuable in fantasy football. What I would do personally is I would look to sell. I know that I am not big on selling guys low because fantasy football is like the stock market. Players' stock always go back up. That's how fantasy football works. But a guy like Rachaad White, I wasn't big on him in the offseason. I would look to upgrade a guy like Rachaad White because I do think that season long, like, he really doesn't possess enough value for me to hold him. And Christian Kirk, this is a guy I would hold. I would hold Christian Kirk because, you know, as good as Calvin Ridley was, and I just got done saying how wrong I was on Calvin Ridley, as good as Calvin Ridley was, this offense is going to feature a guy, you know, it's going to be different every week. Like Christian Kirk, I know that he only saw 3 targets on Sunday against the Colts. Zay Jones out-targeted him. That's not going to happen on a consistent basis. Christian Kirk, it's still important to follow the money. And Christian Kirk got a massive contract from them last year, and he's still under contract for a couple more years, and he's got a lot of guaranteed money attached to him. They're not all of a sudden just going to phase this guy out of the offense. I understand it was a bad week. I'm still in on Christian Kirk. I don't think that you guys should sell Christian Kirk, especially when his value is this low. DeAndre Swift season. Got a trade upcoming, full PPR. Jamar Chase for Barkley and JSN. My RBs are James Cook and DeAndre Swift. So this is a situation where I think that, you know, Jamar Chase, obviously, he's going to be on a lot of trading blocks this week. Jamar Chase had a bad week, along with every other Cincinnati Bengal in this offense right here. So it was a bad week for the Cincinnati Bengals as a whole. So not ideal, not an ideal situation at all. I would not make this type of deal personally. As much as I love Jackson Smith and Jigba, I would not make this type of deal. I think that Jamar Chase, he's going – look, every Cincinnati Bengals year has been the same for the past several years. Joe Burrow starts out the season very, very slow, and so do the Bengals as a result of that. So I am not concerned with Jamar Chase long-term. It was a bad day, and I do think that he will improve throughout the rest of the season. So I will go ahead and continue to hold Jamar Chase. Dylan Fink, what's your package trade on my team for a quarterback like Lamar? Owner would prefer a running back. My team, Geno, Anthony Richardson, Pollard, James Cook, Mostert, Herbert, Diggs, Nook, Michael Thomas, Hollywood, Andrews likely. Owner has Rashad White and Javonte Williams. So if you want a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, I'm not trading anyone. Like, personally, I'll throw this at you guys. A guy like Anthony Richardson, I included him on my buy low trade targets video today. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. After this live stream is over, you'll get a lot of value from that. So I had Anthony Richardson on that list. I think Anthony Richardson is going to be a very good player this year. And it's going to be a lot sooner than I thought. So Lamar Jackson, based on what he did yesterday, there's people who are going to want to sell him for sure. This is a situation where I would try to fleece somebody. Like if you have the propensity to take some anger from your league mates who you offer a very low value trade to, this is the type of move I do all the time. And a lot of times it works. You buy low when someone's desperate. And a lot of the reality is in fantasy football, week 1 is the week that everybody overreacts to. Everybody. So Lamar Jackson, I would try to send like a deal like Geno Smith and, maybe looking at your running backs, I would try to send like a Geno Smith, Khalil Herbert type of deal personally. That's the move I would make right here. So guys, it is a live stream for a reason. If you've got chats, go ahead and put them in the chat below. It's not going to be a super long live stream, but we're going to get through every question and continue to go what I got right and wrong in fantasy football for week 1. The reason I do this after every week is because transparency is a very important value to this channel. It is a building block for this channel because I don't think that anybody can say you can move forward without being honest about what you got right and what you need to correct and what you got wrong moving forward. So we do this every single week for a reason. Matt C, sell Ayuk on the high. I've wrestled with this one all day, honestly. I've been wrestling with this one. I'm going to err on the side of not doing it. And I'll go over it more. I'm not going to reveal too much because Brandon Ayuk, you'll see him in tomorrow's video. That is the top 30 wide receiver rankings video for week 2 fantasy football. I'm not going to reveal too much more because I'll talk more about Brandon Ayuk in that video tomorrow. Dylan, I like Sean Tucker out of the Bucs backfield too. I do as well. I think that he could see more touches going forward. Angela, my first week ever in fantasy football was crazy. I felt so confident at first with Anthony Richardson, Bijan Barkley, but I also had Goddard, Higgins, and London. Yeah, that when you have 3 guys giving you 0 points, it's unfortunate. That's not going to happen every week. It's not going to happen every week. T. Higgins, he's not going to be a 0 guy again. Dallas Goedert, he's not going to be another 0 guy. Drake London does concern me. I will say that. And you'll notice it in tomorrow's rankings video if you watch it. Make sure to tune in for that. And make sure to drop a like on this video if it gives you value or if you just appreciate me admitting what I got wrong in fantasy football because there's not a ton of fantasy YouTubers out there who do this type of situation. So I do think that, it's very important. Like I said, it's very important to acknowledge what you got wrong because you can't move forward unless you acknowledge what you got wrong. I also want a bunch Andrews Lamar too, trying to buy low on Gibbs. Love your takes. I'll check out your videos. I appreciate that, man. I really do. So yeah, guys, let me continue to go through what I got right and wrong. So we ended off with the defense. Another thing I need to admit is that I absolutely was dead wrong on Zay Flowers as well. Zay Flowers is the type of guy that coming into the season, I was like, there's no way that I want to draft a guy like Zay Flowers because not only is he a rookie in an offense that's run first, but he's also competing with Rashad Bateman. He's competing with Odell Beckham Jr. And the reality is the fantasy football pie for pass catchers in a Baltimore Ravens offense has historically been pretty low. So I had a big issue with that personally. But what we saw the other day was ridiculous. Dude, this is outrageous. He had a 48% target share in week 1 against Houston. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now, that number is not going to hold up once Mark Andrews comes back. Just to let you guys know and to be clear on that, it's not going to hold up when he comes back, but he's going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. I'm still not confident saying start a Baltimore receiver every single week, but man, Zay Flowers is definitely going to be a guy who is going to be a legit flex option moving forward for me personally. What I got right also, Brandon Ayuk. I mean, Brandon Ayuk is a guy that we need to talk about right now. This is not like, I am not saying that like I was like super high on Brandon Ayuk all week and that everybody else who wasn't high on Ayuk is stupid. Like, I'm not saying that. Brandon Ayuk was not in my top 15 wide receivers in week 1 fantasy football. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm referring to specifically is if you were on my live stream on Sunday before the games, I got a comment asking me what I thought about Brandon Ayuk versus Nico Collins. And he said that he had went to another fantasy football channel and they told him to start Nico Collins. And I said, no, never start Nico Collins over Brandon Ayuk unless Brandon Ayuk is hurt. And the reason that I said that, and the reason that I included this on this video is that when you're looking at fantasy football as a whole, I think that there's a lot of different philosophies and a lot of different ideas of how to play fantasy football, especially when you're new. This is super important to know. Fantasy football, you cannot play the game of being scared about putting in a guy in your lineup. So what I mean by that is like when you look at a guy like Nico Collins, he's clearly the wide receiver 1 in the Houston Texans offense, right? So the volume will be there. Now, converse that versus Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk is a more talented player and is on a better offense, but has more target competition week to week. And I think a lot of people look at that and say, well, maybe I should just take the steadier option and the one I know that whose workload is going to be safer. I fundamentally disagree with that. Because fantasy football is all about swinging for the fences. You have to swing for the upside in fantasy football. Because the reality is, this guy who may be looked at as a top like target getter and a top volume guy, he may not do much, right? Like that's the reality of the situation. Look at a guy like Marquise Hollywood Brown. Got 6 targets on Sunday, had like 20 yards. Bad offense, right? Houston Texans, bad offense. And Nico Collins wasn't a bad play yesterday, but Brandon Ayuk was obviously tremendous. And that's the upside that we were shooting for when we made that call. We shoot for upside here. So that means play a guy on a better team. Play a better talent. Play a guy who you know can hit a 30-point game. And if he doesn't hit it, you live with it because you shot for the upside. So that's a really important thing that I wanted to go over in this video because I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about how you should be approaching your lineup. Because I think that when you look at a guy like Nico Collins, like I said, offense is just way worse. Whereas Brandon Ayuk, more target competition for sure, but the upside, there's no question, is tremendously higher. Now, another thing I got really, really wrong, and I don't want to say that I'm wrong all season on this one, to be honest with you yet, but I said that Matt Stafford was rapidly declining. And I said that, look, I've got a lot of issues with Stafford. Health-wise, I've got a lot of issues with him being in his later 30s at this point. It's like I don't love Matt Stafford. Well, he ripped up the Seattle Seahawks yesterday in one of the most fascinating and unexpected matchups of the week. I mean, the Rams took Seattle's lunch money and beat the living crap out of them. It's like, I was not expecting that. So Matt Stafford, to me, like, obviously, when I was saying the stuff about Matt Stafford, I always said that there's no question, like, nobody's debating his legacy. I am not debating his legacy. I just don't think he's a great player now. But I'll tell you what, he looked really good yesterday. And I think that if they can keep him upright and they can keep him healthy, that offensive line, Matt Stafford is going to be better than I thought this year. I want to see how he does against San Francisco this week. That's why I'm not saying I'm completely wrong, because I do think that week one, like I said, there's a lot of overreactions that can happen, but I am willing to admit when I'm wrong. And I was wrong about Matt Stafford in week one for sure. Matt Stafford was legitimately really, really good yesterday with a bunch of no name wide receivers, by the way. No Cooper Kupp, and he was slinging the ball down the field. Very, very good week for him. I was very impressed with him. Guys, it's a live stream for a reason. Put in your comments below about fantasy football. We're going over what we got right and what we got wrong in week one fantasy football, because we are big on honesty and transparency on this channel right here. So make sure to give that video a like if you are getting value from it so far, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. We are just about done going through our right and wrong list. Another thing I got right is Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman, guys, I'm not going to reveal too much of it because I go into him very deep in tomorrow's wide receiver rankings video. But I am really buying in on Michael Pittman right now. And I've got a ton of him. I drafted him because he was a great value this year in drafts. So I got lucky. Like, I drafted a bunch of Michael Pittman. And I hope you did the same, because Michael Pittman is going to be getting harder and harder to trade for. I really like Michael Pittman. This is a guy who's a clear top option in his offense. And honestly, the reason that I think that I wasn't big, like, I wasn't huge on Michael Pittman earlier in the offseason, because this offense was so bad last year, left such a bad taste in my mouth. This team is so much better equipped this year. Anthony Richardson is already an immediate upgrade over Matt Ryan last year and Sam Ehlinger. I mean, he was really, really good. In a loss yesterday to the Jacksonville Jaguars, it was the most encouraging loss I saw all day, all week. It was the most encouraging loss I saw all week. I'm big on the Colts this year. Shane Steichen is going to come in and be very, very good for this team, be very, very good for Anthony Richardson, and be very, very good for Michael Pittman moving forward. And the last thing we'll end on what I got wrong, Drake London, guys. Drake London, for me moving forward, until I see differently, I'm sitting Drake London. It hurts. It really does, because I've drafted a bunch of Drake London this offseason. So I cannot tell you guys, my audience, to start Drake London with confidence. This guy, the problem is not the player. The problem is so not the player. He's a very good player. The problem is 100% the offense that he's in. This offense threw 18 passes on Sunday. It's so run heavy. This is a run heavy offense, guys. And it sucks. Like I said, I drafted a bunch of Drake London, but I cannot tell you guys to start him with confidence, because this offense is simply not going to be spreading the ball enough to give a guy like Drake London the upside that he actually possesses as a player. Disappointing one. I was really wrong. Obviously, he goosed this week. It was a massive disappointment. I've got a lot of issues with Drake London moving forward. It was probably the most unsettling and unnerving goose egg that I saw all week. Dallas Goedert, I can live with that. He's a tight end. You drafted him high. He's going to have big games. T. Higgins, I know this offense is going to improve. They're going to be getting games where T. Higgins scores like 20 points. I'm not worried about that. The one I am worried about is Drake London, because I know that this offense is going to lead the league in rushing this year again. They did it in 2022. They will do it again in 2023. And that makes me very, very concerned about Drake London. So let's go ahead, answer these questions real quick, and then we're going to go ahead and sign off. I've still got to edit a bunch of videos tonight, so it's going to be a very late night for me tonight. So make sure to drop that like on this video, because I'm staying up super late to give you guys as much value as I possibly can in these fantasy videos. And make sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. So, Big Luscious, would you trade Christian Kirk for Mike Williams or Jahan Dotson? You know, this is again where it gets interesting, because I look at a guy like Mike Williams, who's a big boomer bust guy in just as good of an offense, basically. And it's tempting for sure. The problem I have with Mike Williams is that he's got the injury factor. He was already injured in week one, and he's also just super inconsistent. Now, granted, Christian Kirk was nothing to be proud of either, but I am still leaning towards Christian Kirk. It's a personal preference thing for me. Jahan Dotson is one that I think I would make. I would make a Jahan Dotson trade for Christian Kirk. Angela, what's going on? Also have Waddle, DJ Moore, Saints defense, bench, Higbee, Piron, Collins, Rice, Reed, Woods, and Singletary. Thinking about dropping Singletary for Kyron or Justice. Thoughts? Am I way off? No, I would totally drop Singletary for one of those guys. That's exactly what I would do. If Kenneth Gainwell is on your waiver wire, that's the guy to prioritize right there. I made a waiver wire video earlier today, so if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. You'll get some good waiver wire targets and guys that you need to add before this week. But I think the guy on your bench to drop would definitely be Singletary. That's the guy I would drop on your bench. I would also be good with dropping Robert Woods as well. Drafted London in the fifth too. Yeah, it's a bad situation in this offense. Jaws, only a couple of those throws beyond the line of scrimmage. Yeah. Yep, exactly. Isaiah Lamb, thoughts on Addison as flex? London was my flex. I also have Roschon. Yeah, Jordan Addison is going to be my preferred option moving forward over Drake London because they throw the ball more. Minnesota is going to be throwing the ball plenty. Jordan Addison had a good week in week 1. He's a pro-ready rookie. Jordan Addison, I have more trust in at this point than Drake London. The guy who broke my trust the most in week 1 was Drake London. Taco Cheese, should I pick up Gainwell, Algier, or Kyron Williams? Gainwell for sure. Gainwell is the guy you want to pick up the most. He is the most important pickup. This is the number 1 offensive line, a top 3 offense in the NFL, and you're talking about the running back one who handled 18 out of 22 running back touches this week. Absolutely Kenneth Gainwell. Robbins, I'm tempted to drop Christian Kirk to pick up Pittman. What do you think? If you're in that shallow of a league and that's the option, I would do that. I would pick up Michael Pittman and drop Christian Kirk. That's exactly what I would do. So, guys, I'm going to go ahead and sign off tonight. Please make sure to give the video a thumbs up if you got value from it. And make sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not already. We're going to go ahead and get after it tonight. I've got a long night ahead of me. It's going to be like this all season, guys. Staying up super late to get you guys the best content possible and making sure that you are prepared for your fantasy football season every single day, every single week. So make sure, please drop the like. It really helps my channel out a ton. Make sure to subscribe to the channel as well. And I will see you guys in tomorrow's videos.